where would you say you are with God? Because from my understanding, you go to church with some of the indie tribe guys. You have a lot of Christian friends. You know, you're in very similar circles. Your music has some profanity in it, but that's I don't freak out as much about profanity. You know, but where would you say you are now with faith?
Well, I would say I'm pretty squarely on board with the Judeo-Christian value system.
Okay.
I think that I definitely wouldn't fully consider myself a Christian. Like I definitely haven't bridged the gap on certain things enough to say that. I would say that I believe it's more likely than not that there's a God.
So you'd hit me with the Jordan Peterson line if Alex O'Connor asked him if we were having a video camera, go back in time at the tomb of Joseph.
Okay, so as far as the historical stuff, you know, apologetics and all, like I haven't even crossed that threshold yet. I started all the way back at metaphysics.
Okay,
I'm like I need to be convinced whether or not a God could exist.
A spiritual realm exists at all.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Okay.
Exactly. So
and you are convinced that there is a spiritual realm now.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
I think so. And you know, interestingly enough, Bernardo Kastrup, he's a guy I really like. He's a philosopher. His philosophy is analytical idealism, but he had a PhD in philosophy and a PhD in computer science and worked at CERN, and so he kind of blends these two things, and he has some pretty compelling cases for idealism, even with, you know, bringing into it arguments, analytical arguments and philosophical arguments, as well as just like popular science and things like that. And then somebody like Stephen Meyer, you know, speaking to DNA, and John Lennox, you know what I'm saying?
So it sounds like you're a theist now.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then when it comes specifically, again, the question that Alex O'Connor just posed to Jordan Peterson, not sure if you saw that.
Yeah.
If we had a time machine and a video camera and we were to go back in time, stand at the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea.
Yes.
And would we see a bodily, physically risen Jesus coming out of the tomb?
I would say I haven't even given that a look.
Okay.
So to say one or the other, it would feel inauthentic.
Jordan Peterson said, "I suspect so," which I thought was a great answer. I suspect so.
Yeah.
That's great. So,
but I will say, I mean, a point by way of, you know, for Christianity is like I'm so on board with some of these themes and the framework for how to live a purposeful life, and that it's like, well, you know, it's pretty calibrated to truth as it stands. So
it sounds like your worldview, like worldview apologetics, you're like you're there from a worldview standpoint, but when you get into the nitty gritty of the actual apologetics of like the bodily resurrection, the reliability of the New Testament, so on and so forth, you just haven't examined.
I just haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
I'm still trying to really dig into, you know,
what's the biggest? What would you say is the biggest hang up for you?
Well, I would have said that bridging the gap from a non-personal to a personal God.
Okay.
But then, you know, within this the current framework of which I feel good about, I'm like, if we are made in the image of God, why would our consciousness be so catered towards relationships, and that would just be absent from an intelligent creator if we're made in his image, or in an Eastern spiritual context if we are made of the same a limited version of the same conscious
I love that
experience.
you added limited. That's good.
Yeah.
Limited. Because
as Bernardo would say, a dissociative boundary.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like I just keep asking you questions and you're going to sort this out in this conversation. We're going to close you on Jesus by the end of this thing.
Yeah. No, hey, perhaps, bro.
Okay.
I'm with it.
So you went from deist to you went from agnostic to deist. So from deist to theist, a personal God exists that wants to engage with us.
Well, I don't know. I haven't fully made that leap to personal God for sure.
Okay, a God that has an opinion about how you and I are to live our life. A relational God?
I think the relational God, more I have a hang up with a God that intervenes in the life of humans. So that's more of the one I have to kind of ruminate on. That's another frontier.
Okay. Do you pray?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I on occasion. Sometimes it feels inauthentic for me to pray.
That's
and
fair.
At other times I'm like, you know what? Like I'm really trying to because I don't feel like I'm in that space yet.
Sure.
So sometimes it does feel a little like awkward for me knowing that I'm like, hey, I haven't fully submitted myself to this.
Okay.
So doing it feels a little authentic, but I'm also trying to like lean in.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah.
So faith is an interesting concept because a lot of people, specifically in Protestant fundamentalist circles, define faith as certainty.
Yep.
Right? Like certainty. And though I believe that there are ways we can be certain about aspects of faith. I don't think faith is the same as certainty.
Right.
I think faith, to me, if we look at like the definition, we pull up the definition, is more of a confidence spectrum, right? Like I am,
For sure.
I am confident in X, Y, and Z. I am confident that my wife loves me
For sure.
and has been faithful to me and is a good wife and a good mother based on my experience with her and the trust and the life that we've built together.
Right.
Am I certain? No,
Yeah.
I haven't had a video camera following her
Yeah.
around for the 20 years we've been together, right? But I'm fairly confident and I trust her and I'm fairly confident in that and I move in a direction that's fairly close to certainty, but not in a absolute objective fact standpoint. So I think sometimes what Christians have done is they've allowed atheists' definition of evidence,
Yes.
and then in turn try to argue faith in
and
terms
that
that we
Alex
don't make
O'Connor
sense.
and Jordan Peterson conversation, it's like there's an implicit assumption
Yes.
loaded into what evidence constitutes evidence.
Yes.
Which is already has this materialist presupposition in it.
Absolutely. You nailed
Yeah.
it. So this is how I've defined faith, and maybe you've heard me say this before. So for me, I have confidence that if I eat, I don't know, are you into like fitness and health and stuff like that? Later, if I eat my ideal
Can't you
body
tell?
weight, well, I don't know.
No, I'm just
You're
playing.
pretty
no,
lean.
No, I'm
Okay.
It's a joke.
So if I eat my ideal body weight in grams of protein and I strength train and I do compound lifts and I walk 10,000 steps a day, 200 grams of chicken a day, protein a day, which is about 2 pounds, in 10,000 steps, compound lifting, I am confident that if I do those things a day, 4 or 5 times a week, that I will get the said results.
Yeah.
I wasn't certain of that initially.
Yeah, it's based on evidence.
But enough people told me that, hey, man, if you eat chicken and broccoli and you go and you move and you hit these compound lifts and you do them properly and you do the bench, the squat, the deadlift, the pull up, you will eventually look great with your shirt off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I had enough of faith, and Jesus talks about the faith of a mustard seed, that I started doing said things. And then before I knew it, I walk in one day, and I think Zach was there, and John Keith was in the studio, and I walk in, I had a tank top on, I think, and I was just running to grab ice or something, and John Keith goes, "Oh, you got abs?" And I was like, Do I?
Yeah.
And it was like the first time it hit me that like, oh, like I'm not fat no more. Like I'm actually shredded and lean for the first time.
Yeah.
And I had like experimented with lifting weights and experimented with going to the gym, but never like in a consistent regiment. Let me work this out. Now, I think faith, it's a flawed metaphor, but I think it's similar. So like when I'm sitting down with my vegetarian buddy who's like, you know, the chicken is going to blah, blah, blah. And it's just, you get off the chicken. And it's like, no. Like I know this works because I've worked it and I've seen the results of the faith. And now I am certain that if I eat the ideal amount of protein and I go do my 10,000 steps a day walking and I hit the right compound lifts, now I am certain that it will work.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think therein lies like that paradoxical view. But initially I wasn't sure, but it was like enough people told me, you know.
I would say I think I'm a little past that.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I think I'm definitely being led by something.
Yeah.
I think that I'm leaning in
Yeah.
in a variety of different directions.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the first things I did was read a comparative religions book just to set the basis of like what are the core things that people believe.
Yeah.
And then you know, and obviously culturally I have way more familiarity with Christianity.
Sure.
So naturally I'm a little more like
Yeah.
leaning in that direction. But I will say that there are a lot of things that I have gained as far as like wisdom from my own personal experience and mapping of things in my head. And then I just see that just echoed in Christianity. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I thought that was an original idea and it wasn't.
It wasn't.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you know, that's happened several times. And so I don't need verifiable proof to that extent. And I do actually, I believe there's an entire realm of just as viable or just as important belief that doesn't contain the logic. You know, what's the logic of love? You know what I'm saying?
It's hard to quantify love.
Yeah, and it's abstract and it's but it's one, if you felt it, you know how real it is.
Yeah,
you know?
that's good. That's a great point. If you felt it, you know how real it is. And so I guess the part that folks sometimes struggle with is the tension of like grace and truth, right? Like Jesus comes full of grace and truth. And so what that means is grace is a gift that you don't do anything to deserve it. Ephesians 2, right? Like you've been saved by grace through faith. And this is not of your own doing, but is the work of God, so no one can boast. the tricky part is the verse right after that says, "For you are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which He predestined for you to do ahead of time." So it's this tension of our view of salvation it has nothing to do with how good or moral of a person I am.
Yeah.
It has to do with Jesus's work on the cross, and then 2 Corinthians says that He then gives me His righteousness.
Yeah.
That I'm not righteous because of me.
Right.
I'm righteous because of Jesus.
Right.
And then I get to go and practice my faith. And I think sometimes in Protestant circles, like we not all the time, but we have a lower view of practice. We have a lower view of like sacraments, like communion and baptism, and we have a higher view of like grace and knowledge. Like I just need to know facts.
Yeah.
When I would say like I'll give you, and this is not like a plug, but I'll give you like one of our prayer journals.
Sure.
And I encourage people all the time, like just sit down and document your prayers for a month, and just pray for a month. Document and write down everything you're praying for. Write down, because we break it down into like things you're grateful for, like great gratitude, praise requests, praise reports, people you're praying for, like other people, things you're praying for yourself, and then like a memory verse that you're meditating on.
Yeah.
Right? And so like when you structure that out and you do that for a month, then you start seeing like the tangible hand of God moving in your life, and you go, oh, like I make a practice of something and I become more and more confident of said practice of something.
I have a running document where I just type things in that I think of or that I think about.
Yeah.
And if I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting point, I'll kind of expound upon it in just this free form.
Yeah. So you're kind of more like journaling.
Sort of. Yeah.
So this is more like journaling, but like inviting God into your life and like asking Him to move on your behalf, and then saying like, and then seeing the prayers answered. Because sometimes what happens is we'll pray for stuff and then we just forget that we prayed for stuff, you know? So you see all throughout the Old Testament, God is like reminding the children of Israel, like, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I took you out of the Egypt. I've done these things.
Right.
So I think we need to be reminded of the things we were praying for, which can be difficult if like, it can be difficult if you're in a spot where you're like, dude, like, I'm good. Like my life is solid. Like I'm happily married. My career's going well, you know, like I'm stable.
Yeah.
But you invite God in and all of a sudden you go, whoa, like this is spooky.
Yeah.
Like there's some spooky stuff happening in my life.
So again, I don't know where you would land on this, but that invitation is, I feel like I've felt the presence of that, whether or not I have made the full leap.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And
what's keeping you from making the full leap?
Again, I have to look at all the historical stuff.
Okay.
The having an even more kind of robust understanding of this bridge from conscious mentation that precedes space and time to personal God that has, you know what I'm saying? I think there's that. And also, you know, I think I want to also understand what other religions believe about certain things. And so, yeah, I'm trying, I feel pulled in a direction, but I'm trying to make sure that I cover my bases before I fully commit. When I make the faith jump, you know what I'm saying? I want to do it. I don't want to be like, oh, I've stopped the pursuit here, and now this faith jump feels a little less authentic.
Yeah, it's interesting because what you're really saying is, I think Jesus said this in light of salvation, which He says like, count the cost. Like before a builder builds a building, he first has to count the cost. And so what you're really saying is, I want to do my due diligence and I want to count the cost of what it means to be a disciple before I flippantly say I'm a Christian.
Sure.
Which is extremely commendable and respectful.
Thank you,
because
bro.
I think a lot of folks would just be like, yeah, man, like, sure, like Jesus is cool. Jesus is my homeboy. And it's like, hold on. It means so much more than that, you know? So I think that's very commendable. All right, let me know what you think about that in the comments section. And it would be remiss of me to not tell you about our biggest sale of the year, our Father's Day sale happening right now. You can get our brand new Bless God Prayer Journal at the cheapest price it's ever been, as well as some pretty fire priest, provider, protector launch that's perfect for the husband, the father, or the mentor in your life. So go to blessgod.shop and pick up something right now. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.